Seattle ground, about to take off. It's going to be crazy.
We got a very serious situation.
I did a kind of a bad thing.
So you hijacked the plane is what you're saying?
Yeah. I'm afraid I did. I play video games, so, I know what I'm doing a little bit.
He could never be a bad guy. He was always a good guy.
In an hour, he's gonna fall out of the sky. The only way out where nobody dies is if he lands the plane successfully.
He's going upside down.
Holy! This is probably, like jail time for life, huh?
It's August 10th, 2018, Seattle. It's a Friday evening and SeaTac Airport is winding down. The shift is almost over. Workers are clocking out, bags are being loaded, planes are being parked. Nobody's thinking about anything except getting home. And that's exactly when Richard Russell walks past security, climbs into a $33 million commercial aircraft, and starts the engines. He's 28 years old. He has never even sat in a cockpit, let alone flown a plane. And in the next hour, he goes from loading bags at SeaTac to being the most wanted man in American airspace.
Just a broken guy, got a few screws loose, I guess. Never really knew it until now.
This is the story of Bebo. Born in the Florida Keys and raised in Wasilla, Alaska, Russell was goofy and deeply religious. His friends and family called him Bebo from childhood. Nobody quite remembers why. He attended Wasilla High School, where he wrestled and competed in track and field, and was a hard-hitting football fullback who scored 6 touchdowns in his senior year. He was not by any measure someone who raised red flags. While attending a Christian youth program in Oregon, he met a woman named Hannah, who he later married. Together, they opened a bakery. When the bakery didn't work out, they sold it after 3 years and moved to Washington to be closer to Hannah's family. Russell needed work. He found it at Horizon Air, the regional carrier that operates feeder flights for Alaska Airlines up and down the Pacific Northwest. His duties included checked baggage handling, de-icing aircraft in winter conditions, and supporting the towing of planes when they arrived at the gate or needed repositioning. In other words, he lugged bags and drove a tug. In a YouTube video posted to his blog, Russell described his job plainly. "I lift a lot of bags," he said. Like, a lot of bags. So many bags. Working for minimum wage was not helping either. An operational supervisor at Horizon Air described him as a quiet guy who was well liked by the other workers. His social media posts offered no hint he was quietly suffering, but he was. Russell suffered from depression. He was convinced he had no way out. Whatever was building inside him, none of it showed on the outside. A colleague later said he saw Russell in the break room just 45 minutes before he walked out and took the plane. At 7:19 p.m., Russell climbed inside Horizon Air Q400 aircraft N449er-QX. At 7:22 p.m., he began the sequence to start the aircraft and the propellers started turning. At 7:27 p.m., he exited the plane, used a tow vehicle to turn the aircraft nose toward the airfield, then reboarded. Let's be clear about what just happened. This is not a go-kart. This is not a Cessna you rent for $150 an hour to fly over the suburbs. The Q400 seats 76 people, has 2 enormous engines, and to legally sit in its cockpit, you need a commercial pilot's license and hundreds of hours of training. Bebo had a high-vis vest and a tow truck. As a ground crew member, Russell knew the airport inside out. His badge gave him access to the planes, and somehow, through years of watching, paying attention, and reportedly practicing in cockpit simulators on his own time, he'd figured out how to start one. At 7:32 p.m. local time, Russell rolled onto runway 16C and made an unauthorized takeoff. A nearby Alaska Airlines jet on the ground reported that the aircraft began a takeoff roll with its wheels smoking. Seattle Tower tried several times to get the pilot of the aircraft to identify himself, but received no response. The plane was in the air. Nobody knew who was flying it, and every second that passed, it was getting harder to bring it back down. 2 McDonnell Douglas F-15C Eagles from the Oregon Air National Guard's 142nd Fighter Wing, operating under NORAD command, were scrambled at around 8:15 p.m. from Portland Air National Guard Base to intercept the aircraft. Both were armed with AIM-9 Sidewinder and AIM-120 AMRAAM air-to-air missiles and reached supersonic speeds on the way to Puget Sound, generating sonic booms audible across the region. A KC-135 refueling tanker was dispatched from Fairchild Air Force Base to support them. Flights in and out of SeaTac were temporarily suspended. Think about what was happening simultaneously. Air traffic controllers were trying to figure out who was in that cockpit. NORAD was activating its post-9/11 intercept protocols. The FBI was being contacted. Local news stations were breaking in with reports of something involving a Horizon Air aircraft. And two of the most capable air superiority fighters in the American arsenal were closing in at supersonic speed on a turboprop plane flown by a baggage handler. Then, finally, the radio crackled.
Horizon guy.
About to take off. It's going to be crazy.
ATC maintained radio contact with the occupant for the duration of the flight. The transmissions were on an open frequency and were quickly recorded and posted to social media. What followed over the next hour was one of the strangest, most disarming, and most heartbreaking conversations in the history of aviation. Russell did not sound like a terrorist or some dangerous guy. He sounded like a man who had just done something enormous and was now trying to figure out what to do with the time he had left. When ATC suggested he land at a nearby military base, he said no, but not in an angry way. More like he was genuinely trying to be considerate. "Those guys will rough me up if I try and land there," he said. "I think I might mess something up there too. I wouldn't want to do that." He spoke about wanting to see Mount Rainier. He asked controllers for the coordinates of an orca that had been in the news, a mother whale that had been carrying her dead calf for days in a grieving vigil that had captured the Pacific Northwest's attention. He wanted to fly over and see her. At one point, the controller tried to keep him talking, told him Alaska Airlines would give him a job if he could land the plane. Russell laughed. "Yeah, right. Nah, I'm a white guy." He also made a comment about wages. Minimum wage. We'll chalk it up to that. Maybe that'll grease some gears a little bit with the higher-ups. That line went everywhere. Memes, jokes, theories about wages and the working class. But his family pushed back on all of it. He was paid fairly, they said, and they hated watching his story get turned into a political statement. Russell told the controllers he had learned to maneuver the aircraft from playing aviation-themed video games. He was honest that he didn't know how to land and was reluctant to try. There's something sad about that detail. A man who had taught himself enough to steal a commercial aircraft, who was clearly capable of far more than the life he was living, who reached for the sky because he didn't know how to reach for help. In the final minutes of communication, he apologized to his friends and family. "I've got a lot of people that care about me," he said. "It's going to disappoint them to hear that I did this." Now, this is the part that broke the internet. Near the end of the flight, the aircraft performed a barrel roll over Puget Sound, recovering approximately 10 feet above the water. Let's talk about what a barrel roll actually is. The plane has to roll and climb at the same time, tracing a giant corkscrew through the air. In a commercial plane with a 93-foot wingspan, flying low over open water with zero training, this is not supposed to be possible. A veteran pilot who observed it said the maneuver seemed pretty well executed without either stalling or pulling the wings off. He pulled 10 feet above the water. That's lower than the ceiling of the room you're probably sitting in right now. When the controller urged him to land after the roll, Russell's response was quiet. "I don't know," he said. "I don't want to. I was kind of hoping that was going to be it, you know?" It wasn't. The two F-15s attempted to direct the aircraft toward the Pacific Ocean, but did not fire on it. There would be no shoot down of a stolen regional airliner over a populated metropolitan area. They could only follow. At 8:46 p.m., the flight data recorder shows the end of the flight. The Q-400 crashed on Ketron Island in Puget Sound, a sparsely populated, heavily forested island west of Tacoma, killing Russell and destroying the aircraft. No injuries were reported to any residents, even though the crash site was close to at least one occupied cabin. The fire burned a 2-acre area before being extinguished. A nearby towboat crew was the first on the scene. Firefighters took over an hour and a half to arrive. They had to wait for a ferry just to get to the island. Richard Russell was the sole fatality. The FBI's investigation found no co-conspirators, no terrorist ideology, no criminal network. He had acted entirely alone. The medical examiner concluded there was sufficient evidence the final descent was intentional. On November 9, 2018, the FBI stated that it had completed its investigation. Terrorism was ruled out. The cause of death was listed as suicide. Within hours of the ATC recordings being posted online, the internet did what the internet does. Thousands of memes appeared. A subreddit named Sky King was established as a hub for discussions, flight simulator recreations of the flight path, and edited videos syncing the ATC audio with music. He was dubbed Sky King. Annual memorial posts appear every August 10th to this day. His family took serious issue with this. They said he wouldn't have been happy about becoming a folk hero, and they were particularly concerned about how his story had been adopted and politicized. His mother, Karen, said she cannot listen to the ATC recordings. "I can't hear his voice," she said, because his voice was very special. He spoke so well. His brother Phil said it as plainly as anyone could. The kid had unlimited potential. The FBI investigation found that no element of Russell's background, personal life, or the stressors identified by friends and colleagues provided a clear motivation for his actions. There was no note, no manifesto, no final text that explained it all. What we have instead is 75 minutes of radio audio. A man who was clearly intelligent, warm, funny, and deeply in pain, filling the last hour of his life with small talk about orca whales and barrel rolls and whether or not he could get a job at Alaska Airlines, apologizing to people he would never speak to again. But underneath all of that is something much harder to sit with. A 28-year-old who didn't know how to ask for help, who left behind a family that's still trying to tell his story right. That's the story of Bebo. If you or someone you know is struggling, please reach out to the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. Call or text 988. See you next time.